As the family happily gathered for a family portrait, there was a boy sitting behind the photographer who stood out like a sore thumb. This should have been a photo for the White family only, but the mother, ignoring the father's hesitation, invited their newly adopted black son to join them. The boy could hardly believe it, but a moment later, he carefully stood up, nodded to the photographer, and took his place beside them, and just like that, for the first time he felt the warmth of a family. The boy's name was Mike. Due to his mother's personal struggles, he was often separated from her, and had never met his father. Throughout his childhood, Mike mostly lived with relatives. What's worse, his mother never checked in on him, and no one ever truly saw the fragile heart beneath his tough exterior. Now, Mike looked big and heavy, but his movements were surprisingly agile, so his uncle recommended him to Bert, a local high school sports coach. Bert was amazed, watching Mike play basketball. However, Mike's grades and other subjects were extremely poor. His academic skills were at a 6-year-old's level, and every teacher gave him the lowest scores. Unsurprisingly, no one wanted to accept a student who performed so poorly, and everyone knew Bert was only interested in Mike's athletic talent.
Well, he wouldn't be able to play sports until he got his grades up anyway.
Forget sports. Look at the wall. Christian, we either take that seriously or we paint over. You don't admit Michael Moore because of sports.
Eventually, because Bert insisted strongly, Mike was admitted as an exception into this all-white school. When the bell rang at the end of class, the teacher noticed Mike hadn't answered a single question. Instead, he'd drawn a picture on his test paper, a lonely boy on a sailboat, all by himself. This was Mike's way of showing his inner world, a lonely boy longing for a friend. But even younger kids were afraid of him. Just then, a man came to the school looking for Mike. He'd come from the police station with bad news. Mike's father, whom he had never met, had passed away unexpectedly the day before. The man expressed his sympathy, but since Mike had never known his father, he felt no sadness inside. Well, things got worse that night, when another argument broke out at his uncle's house, and once again, it was because of Mike. Whenever this happened, Mike knew it was time for him to leave. So, he took the earliest bus in the morning and hid in a corner of the sports arena. But Mike wasn't there to watch the games. He came because after each game, lots of popcorn and drinks were left behind in the seats. That's what he survived on for the day. And whenever he'd gather what was left, he'd also clean up all the trash. At night, Mike would go to a public laundromat to wash his clothes with free water from the sink. If the coast was clear, he might even slip his clothes into someone else's washer to get them properly cleaned. Mike, with nowhere to go, might have kept living like this, but then this family showed up and changed everything. Nan used to be one of them, but for some reason, this time she couldn't just look the other way.
Big Mike. Hey, my name's Leanne Tui. My kids go to Wingate. You said you were going to the gym. School gym's closed. Why were you going to the gym?
Because it's warm.
Do you have any place to stay tonight? Don't you dare lie to me.
Just as Anne suspected, Mike wasn't being honest. He had nowhere to go that night. He was just trying to find a warm spot to sleep. Anne looked back at her husband, Sean. He knew exactly what she was thinking, and agreed to let Mike get in the car and come home with them. When Mike arrived at Anne's house, he was amazed. He'd never stayed in a house this nice. Collins, Anne's daughter, was just as surprised.
Collins, you know Big Mike from school?
Since the guest room was full of stored items, Anne let Mike sleep on the sofa in the living room. She showed him where the bathroom was, and told him to come to her if he needed anything. But back in her own room, Anne started to regret her decision. She worried Mike might steal from them, or damage their things. As it turned out, none of her worries came true. The next morning, the sofa was left with neatly folded blankets, and Mike had cleaned up the living room perfectly. He hadn't taken a thing. That's when Anne knew Mike was a good kid. Since it was Thanksgiving and Mike had nowhere else to go, Anne invited him to stay and spend the holiday with the family. Now, Sean's family had prepared a huge breakfast, and Mike felt completely overwhelmed. Collins kindly handed him a plate, but Mike only took a small scoop of rice, and when he thought no one was looking, secretly picked up one dinner roll. He was afraid they'd think he was eating too much. While everyone else took their food to eat in front of the TV, Mike sat properly at the dining table all by himself. So Anne turned off the TV and had everyone come join him at the table. Then they held hands and started saying grace, but Mike couldn't help peeking. This whole moment felt unreal to him. Just yesterday he was on the street after the meal. Anne took Mike to buy some new clothes. After all, he was still wearing a short sleeve shirt in the middle of winter. But Anne's kindness, with no strings attached, was something Mike couldn't easily accept. He'd never been treated so well before, and deep down he felt uneasy about someone being so good to him, for no reason. So he told Anne he still had clothes at his place and just needed a ride back to his place. But when they got there, Mike stopped Anne from getting out. This was the older part of town, a tight-knit area where you'd often see members of local groups just hanging around, and they weren't always welcoming to outsiders. Mike didn't want anything to happen to Anne here, which is why he told her to stay in the car. When Mike walked up to his home though, he found it had been locked up by the courts. His mother hadn't left any way to reach her. Mike was heartbroken. He'd been left behind again. He walked back slowly to Anne's car. He didn't tell her his mother was gone for good, but when Anne saw he hadn't brought any clothes back, she figured out what happened. So, Anne drove Mike to a nearby store instead. Mike had never really been clothes shopping before, and because of his large build, the clothes in his size weren't cheap. After looking through the options, he still picked out the least expensive items he could find. Now, Anne drove both kids to school every day. Their son, little Sean, really liked having Mike around. It made him feel safer, and even got more attention at school. One evening, Anne decided a guy Mike's size shouldn't keep squeezing onto the small sofa every night. She wanted to clear out a room for him.
You want to stay here, Michael?
I don't want to go anyplace else.
Mr. Sean hadn't said much, but just the week before, he'd quietly listed himself as Mike's emergency contact at school. Anne smiled to herself, appreciating her husband's quiet way of saying yes to letting Mike stay. Soon after, during a meeting with Mike's teacher, Anne learned that while Mike was at the bottom of his class in every subject, his protective instincts scored in the top 2% in the entire state, a result that truly surprised her. Anne quickly got a room ready for Mike, even buying a mattress that fit him properly.
Sir.
Never had one before.
What, a room to yourself?
A bed.
She was a kind woman, and Mike's situation weighed on her heart. She felt bad for suspecting he might steal from them that first night, and even worse for not getting him a real bed sooner. With the family's care, Mike's grades started improving rapidly, and Coach Bert had already informed Mike that he was eligible to play in the spring football games. To celebrate, Sean decided to take everyone out for a meal at a nice restaurant. That's when Anne remembered she needed to pick up a design book, so she took the kids across the street to the library before dinner. Inside, Collins opened a storybook, the same one her mother used to read to her at bedtime when she was little. The sweet scenes would revisit her dreams, leaving her with warm childhood memories.
Michael, your mom ever read either one of those books to you?
As they were leaving the restaurant, Mike noticed something. One of the staff members gathering leftover food from plates was his older brother Marcus, whom he hadn't seen in years. They'd been separated as kids when their mother sent them to live with different people, and they never knew how to find each other again. That night, Anne read a storybook to the younger kids. Collins lingered by the doorway to listen. With Mike there, it was almost like she'd found that old feeling again, the one from childhood, when she could only fall asleep after her mother finished reading a fairy tale. Mike was fitting in more and more with Sean's family. They even took a family photo together at Thanksgiving. Soon, the word got out that Anne had taken in a black teenager. The women in her upscale social circle first laughed, then gasped, wondering if Anne was using Mike as a charity case for publicity for Mr. Sean's company. Someone even joked dramatically that a guy Mike's size would eat them out of house and home. Although Anne kept insisting Mike was a good kid, they just criticized and made snide remarks.
Before or after he turns over in his grave? Daddy's been gone 5 years away. Look, here's I don't need no more choices, alright?
That's awesome for you. What about Collins?
What about Collins?
Aren't you worried? I mean, even just a little. He's a boy, a large
need anyone's approval, and she hated how people judged a struggling kid just by his looks. Right then, she regretted even knowing people whose minds were so narrow and mean. She couldn't believe she'd once called them friends. Later, at home, Anne still asked Collins if she felt uncomfortable having Mike live with them. Collins thought her mom had heard the talk at school. She told her mother she didn't want Mike out on the streets, and since little Sean adored Mike, she was fine with him staying. Collins, raised by kind-hearted Anne, had the same goodness inside her. The next day, on her way to school, Collins saw Mike playing happily with two other kids. Seeing that convinced her she'd made the right choice. However, when they ran into each other at the library again, Mike didn't go over to say hi to Collins. He'd heard the gossip among the students and didn't want to cause any trouble for Collins by being seen with him, so he sat alone in a quiet corner. After a moment's hesitation, Collins walked over with her study materials and sat right down beside him.
We say it together now.
With the upcoming football game approaching, the team had begun training. Coach Bird had high hopes for Mike. He was bigger than anyone else on the field and had raw talent. However, Mike didn't understand the rules of football at all. He'd just slam opponents to the ground, or even hoist them onto his shoulders and run. He also struggled to stay focused. Sometimes a stray balloon floating by was enough to distract him. After the morning training session, Mike hadn't improved at all. Bird found it odd. Most kids with tough childhoods developed an aggressive edge, especially on the field, but Mike didn't seem to want to hit anyone. If he kept this up, all the talent would go to waste. So little Sean started giving Mike personal training sessions. That summer, they spent every day together working out, from long runs taking them down step by step. And with Anne's family by his side, Mike kept moving forward, taking slow but steady steps. One day, Mike asked Anne if he could get his driver's license. Anne was confused. Why would he need a license if he didn't have a car?
Something to carry.
It hit her then. He just wanted a form of ID, something that proved he existed. However, when Anne took Mike to get his license, his name didn't show up in the system. That meant Mike must have had another name, or his mother had never registered his birth. That gave Anne an idea. She decided to go through the process to legally adopt Mike, but first, she needed to understand his past. Anne thought maybe taking Mike to a therapist would help him open up. Sean knew that wouldn't work. Mike's best skill was forgetting. He hardly ever got angry or dwelled on the past, which Sean saw as a way of protecting himself, something people who often felt unseen would do. The next day, Anne went to the authorities to look into Mike's records. The file only had vague notes about a chaotic childhood. Mike's birth mother had a long list of personal struggles and more than a dozen children. She'd had a revolving door of boyfriends and husbands, probably lost count herself. If Anne wanted to adopt Mike, she didn't need the mother's permission. The state would grant approval automatically. But Anne didn't go that route. She tracked down where Mike's mother was living.
Miss Ola?
You from the state?
No. My name is Leanne Chewy. Your son, Michael, lives with me and my family.
Once she learned Anne meant no harm, or let her in, even putting on a wig and a clean dress to look more presentable. She was extremely thin, but she tried to keep up appearances in front of Anne, or explained that over the years, Mike had been taken by the state many times and had even been placed with other families. But every time he would find his way back to his mom because he knew she wasn't well and needed someone to look after her. Eventually, no one wanted to adopt him anymore. Anne asked for Mike's birth certificate, which would make things much easier, or couldn't answer. Overwhelmed, she began to cry, and admitted she hadn't been much of a mother. In the end, all she could remember was Mike's last name. She had long forgotten what his father looked like. It was the only help she could offer. Anne sat down beside Orr, and held her hand tightly. As a mother herself, the only thing Anne could do at that moment was to offer comfort from one mother to another. Soon after, the family held a meeting. They asked Mike if he wanted to officially become part of their family, with Mr. Sean and Anne as his legal guardians. Collins and little Sean knew exactly what this meant. While everyone else smiled happily, Anne started crying again, not out of guilt this time, but out of joy that Mike was now truly one of them. Not long after that, Mike got his driver's license, just as he'd wanted. He smiled brighter than ever. It was the first thing he'd ever had that proved who he was. To surprise him, Sean gave Mike a sharp-looking pickup truck. Mike loved it, and often took little Sean out for rides. But one day, an accident happened. A van suddenly started backing out of a side road. Mike, who was driving, didn't see it in time, and a collision followed. Mike was filled with guilt. He wasn't worried about his own injuries, and told Ann to check on little Sean first. It turned out little Sean only had minor injuries. The blood on him wasn't even his own. The rescue team noted something unusual. A child that small, hitting the airbag head-on, could have meant severe facial or neck injuries. But in the truck Mike was driving, the airbag had deployed at an angle, redirecting the force away from little Sean. That's why he escaped with only light injuries. You could only say that little Sean was incredibly lucky. Then Ann went over to Mike. No matter how much Bert emphasized it, Mike simply wouldn't go on the offensive against others. Ann, who'd been watching from the sidelines, had seen enough. She walked quickly over to Mike. She told him to treat his teammates like family. Protect the quarterback's blind side just like you'd protect me, she said. The others could be little Sean, Mr. Sean, or Collins. Mike let go of his hesitation. During practice, he stopped holding back, and no opponent on the field could match him. Time flew by, and Mike's first official football game arrived. Now, even after all that training, shook his confidence even more. Mike began to fear he was the reason they were losing. Bert and Ann's family were on the sidelines, anxious and cheering him on, hoping he wouldn't be afraid of the game. But then a man a few rows back joined in, mocking Mike too. The gap in the score kept widening, and the team's morale was sinking. His family was his weakness, but they were also his armor. This time he had no way out. He had to give it everything. Mike charged forward like an unstoppable force, crashing through the opposing line, and even driving his opponent clear out of bounds, leaving everyone in awe. With Mike leading the charge, his team rallied and led his team to an easy victory. Little Sean recorded and mailed out tapes to college football programs across the country. Naturally, coaches everywhere were stunned by Mike's power. Everyone wanted to recruit the big guy. Soon, college coaches started showing up at Mike's school to see his strength for themselves, and Mike never disappointed. Before long, letters and brochures from universities piled up, and the voicemail box was constantly overflowing. The only thing holding him back now was his grades. If he could get them up, he had a real shot at becoming a serious football prospect. But here was the biggest challenge for Ann. Mike's grades were still far behind, so she hired a tutor, Miss Sue, to work with Mike every day after practice and games. Still, when it came to book learning, Mike struggled to keep up. Yet with Miss Sue's patient coaching, his scores began to climb significantly. As Mike kept studying, university reps kept visiting the house, offering all sorts of incentives to get Mike to choose their school. But Mike already had most of what he needed. So many of them figured the best way to win over the big guy was through little Sean. The University of Tennessee made the most tempting offer. They promised that little Sean and his coach could go onto the field before the game and do the coin toss in front of the whole crowd. Little Sean loved the idea and started nudging Mike toward Tennessee. With Mike's grades rising steadily, it looked like he'd be heading to the University of Tennessee without a hitch. But when decision time came, Mike ended up choosing the University of Mississippi because that was where Ann and Sean had gone. He wanted to walk the same path his parents had. There was still one problem. Mike couldn't seem to pass the essay. He didn't know what to write about, and said he didn't have any big dreams. So
Not though the soldier knew someone in London.
Someone in the state.
The leader. The coach.
But why would they go ahead if they knew he messed up?
There's not to make me cry. There's not to reason. There's what to do about it. Until you've been lived after the 600.
Oh, the guy.
it was a bleak story, but also a tribute to courage. Hearing it had changed Mike, a young man who once saw no future for himself. For the first time he understood what courage meant, and his whole outlook changed. When he turned in his next essay, his teacher was moved by what Mike had written. Mike finally passed, graduating with his class. Standing before his family, he had earned a future of his own. The couple knew the University of Mississippi well, and Mike was looking forward to campus life. But right then, an investigator from the College Sports Association showed up, asking to speak with Mike alone. They suspected the family had other motives. Both Ann and Sean had graduated from that university, and Collins and little Sean were likely to go there too. Even Coach Bert, who taught Mike football, had recently taken a job at Ole Miss. As a future five-star recruit, Mike had chosen a school with fewer resources over a top program like Tennessee. The investigator suggested Ann might have taken Mike in just to steer a top player to her alma mater. Otherwise, why would anyone invest so much care in a stranger who used to survive on leftovers? The investigator's words hit Mike hard. He didn't know how to respond. Furious, he stormed out, took it all to heart, and convinced himself his family had been a lie, that he was just a tool. He refused to listen to Ann's explanations, and left the house on his own. Even Ann began to question her own motives. Had there been some hidden reason when she decided to take Mike in? Alone and with nowhere to go, Mike returned to his old neighborhood, hanging out with some guys he used to know. He listened as they started insulting Collins and Ann. Mike couldn't take it and got into a fight. He only stopped when a baby nearby started crying. That sound reminded him of his own mother and his broken childhood. And in that moment, he finally saw clearly who had truly been good to him.
You so much as cross into downtown, you will be sorry. I'm in a prayer group with the DA. I'm a member of the NRA, and I'm always back.
She also realized that having Mike in her life had made her find her own strength. Her own fears had faded. Later that day, Mike called Ann. When they met, he apologized quietly. He explained that as a child, whenever something bad happened, his mother would tell him to close his eyes until it was over. That's why he always ran from his problems. But from now on, he didn't want to live like that anymore.
I know I should have asked you this a long time ago. Do you even want to play football? I mean, you even want to.
Pretty good at it.
Yeah, you are. Sean and I have been talking. Mike can accept a football scholarship. We think it should be to Tennessee. And I promise that I will be at every game, cheering for you.
Every game.
Every game. But I will not wear that gaudy orange. I will not. It's not my color. I'm not gonna wear it.
You want me to go to Tennessee?
I want you to do whatever you want. It's your decision. It's your life.
Ann's respect had settled something inside Mike. Then Mike bravely answered the investigator's questions. He was still choosing the University of Mississippi, not for any advantage, but because his family had gone there, and he wanted to too. It was that simple. The investigator had no grounds to pursue it further. On the first day of college, everyone was all smiles except for Ann, who was crying again, hiding in the car. Mike went over and knocked on the window, then gave his kind, tearful mom a big hug.